Good morning, Broncos country. AJ back, and we're here with some more Broncos talk. And we got some really interesting stuff to get into here, particularly talking this year's rookie class and how did they fare? Were there certain draft picks that we could have done better with? I mean, that all really depends on who you're asking, I suppose. But right now, the first thing I want to talk about is something I seem to keep hearing about more than I honestly care to, if nothing else. And apparently, it seems to be, I guess, some sort of communication issue between Bo Nix and Sean Payton. I I don't know. It really is a bunch of nonsense. There are a lot of people believing that the Bo Nix injury is worse than he thought, and then of course, because of scar tissue, there's gonna lead to more cause for concern and just a lot of just actual nonsense. Like that's the only way I know to look at it is that it's actual nonsense on so many different levels that I don't even know how else to say it because obviously, I think we all felt pretty much the same way when the news broke. Of course, it was rather deflating to say the least. I think that everyone, when the word got out, wasn't particularly pleased, but in that same vein, we were all quick to rally behind Jared Stidham, and rightfully so. I mean, if not for a couple of play calling mishaps, along with just absolute mistakes throughout the entirety of the AFC Championship game, and it's just not that there was any shortage of that from the Broncos side of it. I honestly feel as if, really and truly, it's also got to come down to the fact that we've dealt with a lot of drops from the Broncos receiving core. And not even just in this particular game, but in pretty much seemingly every game prior to that, including the divisional round matchup with the Buffalo Bills, especially in the case of Portland Sutton, who led the team with, I guess it was like 8 to 10 drops that were officially counted. I'm really not sure, but either way, the reality is, had his performance been just a little bit better than what it had been, especially in the first half of that divisional round game against the Bills, not only does it not go into overtime, but Bo Nix is actually playing in the AFC title game. And in addition to all of that, they're going to the Super Bowl. We get an actual Super Bowl 48 rematch with the Seahawks. And we'll just be real about one thing. Obviously, that's a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda, ifs. If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk or whatever. Fine, have tell that all you want, but the reality is this, and this is just focusing on all the stuff between Bo Nix and Sean Payton. I don't see there being any real issues. I'm feeling like there are certain things that were probably said in jest that have been blown quite a bit out of proportion. And realistically, Bo's already expected to be back in about 4 to 6 weeks, meaning he'll be ready for OTAs. Now, whether or not he's necessarily participating in said OTAs remains to be seen. We'll see how Sean Payton chooses to go about that at that time. But that's literally at least a handful of months away, along with the fact that we've got free agency in literally less than a couple of months. And of course, the draft in a little less than a handful of months, right there. So, to me, I just, again, can't look at this as anything other than nonsense. I don't understand why people have taken what they have with it and ran the way they have with it. It just has gotten incredibly stupid, and I'll just be perfectly honest, it just needs to stop. I guess, unfortunately, we won't see that stop until we actually see Bo Nix, probably in OTAs, whatever the case may be, but it's just nonsense that doesn't deserve to see the light of day whatsoever. And hopefully everybody comes to realizing that, especially within the fan base or wherever it has to be in the media, that shit just needs to stop. Plain and simple. But moving right along, I want to talk about this past season's rookie class and just want to talk about them specifically because of an evaluation that was given. Oh, I guess you could call it something of an evaluation that was offered from the crew on Lockdown Broncos. Shout out to those guys, by the way. Um, Cody Rourke and Sarah Bettinger, awesome group there with everything that they do, along with all the other Broncos creators that are out there, along aside from myself. Definitely huge fans of theirs, but a lot of what they talked about was real interesting, specifically the use of last year's number 20 pick in the first round on Jade Barron. And to be perfectly honest with you, I was actually quite happy with that pick. I know a lot of people were really high on Amarian Hampton or even Trayvon Henderson. I guess Trayvon Henderson I don't have so much of a problem with, but in that same vein, I understand why they didn't go with him specifically. And then, of course, drafted RJ Harvey in the second round, even though it didn't happen until they traded down at least a couple of times. All the same, to me, RJ did a really good job with the role that he was placed into. Unfortunately, his role accelerated with the J.K. Dobbins injury, and of course, there's a lot to be discussed as far as said injury is concerned. This is where I feel like in this year's draft, we look at getting another running back, preferably someone along the lines of a Katron Allen, who is a bit of a bigger body, and in the long run will actually be able to sustain a lot of that wear and tear that maybe JK doesn't have a whole lot of, for all we know. I mean, that's really hard to say at this point. But RJ Harvey, especially having led all rookies with 12 touchdowns this season, was really good for what he brought to the table. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I was actually rather excited about the pick when it happened. I thought it happened a little earlier than expected. I was thinking they would probably go a little bit of a different direction, maybe linebacker, perhaps even tight end for that matter. But they went with RJ Harvey. And of course, speaking of tight end, they picked up Caleb Lohner, who I'll talk about in a moment. But if nothing else, it was just a bit much expecting RJ to actually take on the load that JK did. I think maybe they should have gone a bit more to Jaleel in a lot of those cases, especially being a more experienced running back. But all the same, everything worked out the way that it did. There was the 12, or I want to say 13 game win streak. Either way, only real bad game aside from, well, I can't even say there were bad games out in Indianapolis and LA respectively, but obviously those were the only other two losses. The only real bad game came in week 16 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where obviously we remember what happened on that. Of course, that's not going to wind up happening again, especially given the fact that, as I understand it, they'll be coming back for the 2026 season. So I expect the Broncos not only to be fired up, but they're going to be primed and ready for providing a different outcome this time around. But even with all that being the case, you think about guys like a Pat Bryant, who, honestly, for my liking, he was probably on concussion protocol a bit more than what I care to see him. Hopefully that changes as time goes by because you certainly don't want to have to worry about a guy who's got those kind of issues. And simply put, that's just something that has to be said. But for everything that he did in his role, he was fantastic. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a receiver one, but he's definitely going to be a key part in the development of the receiving core now and into the future. And if they pick up another receiver in the draft, say Kevin Concepcion, Chris Brazel, or anyone along those lines, I feel like the situation's going to be as good as you can ask for. Granted, the Broncos did fire receiver coach Kerry Colbert in the process, so hopefully whoever they bring in to replace Colbert will actually be able to coach the receiving core into being everything that they're capable of and possibly even more. And speaking of receiving, we also got to talk about Caleb Lohner, who, for my liking, didn't see the field quite as much as a lot of us would prefer, I imagine. I would also like to think that given that he was a scout team player and on the practice squad, there has to be a design in what Sean Payton has as far as his plans for Caleb Lohner is concerned. And with that being the case, it's just hard to not at least trust in that particular process. I know we're not talking about Joel Embiid or anything like that, but I feel like we got to trust the process where that's concerned. It would have been great to see him have a more active role in these games, specifically this one against the Patriots. Probably would have made a bit more of a difference. And in that same vein, in addition to that, hopefully we can see more from Evan Ingram moving forward. That might actually help Warner's developmental process even more so, even in the regard of taking pressure off of Caleb Warner. But again, that's something where only time can tell. And I definitely got to give a shout out to Jeremy Crawshaw. I wasn't always his biggest fan at times, but the guy got better as the season went on, and he pinned the Patriots multiple times in their own territory during the AFC Championship game. I mean, I feel like that's going to be our guy moving forward and going on into the future. Hopefully, he's a Bronco lifer. But all in all, I feel as if, really all the picks, Q Robinson, he was awesome. And really, for everything that we did get from today, he was definitely pretty good himself. Hopefully, we see more of him. It was just interesting given the fact that we got quite a bit out of Jaquan McMillan, of course, Chris Abrams Drain, and, you know, Moss definitely had his ups and downs throughout the year. But I got to imagine he's going to be coming back bigger and better. If today Barron's going to wind up being worth the first round pick that was spent on him back in 2025, I got to imagine his role will increase. We'll see what happens, especially when it comes to Jaquan McMillan and even perhaps Chris Abrams Jane. But I feel like he could very much be an asset for us. I don't see any way around that. Like I said, we'll have to see. Time will only tell, but we'll just be counting down the days, not only until OTA's training camp, preseason, and ultimately the regular season, but of course, we'll have plenty to talk about along the way, and of course, I will be doing other stuff. This may be the only upload of the morning for me, maybe even for the day. We'll see how all that works out, regardless. But nonetheless, let me know what you guys think. Are you guys over the whole Bo Nix supposed Sean Payton issues? And how do you feel about this year's rookie class? Let me know what y'all think down below. And of course, like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. That being said, this has been your time with A&J, and I thank you for spending it with me.